Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is Watson Michael from Ceylon Institute of English and Leadership. And once again, we are honored to have Mr. Dean Wantenaar back with us, who is the country manager for Believe Fitness Indonesia. He comes from a leadership and interestingly fitness background as well, who possesses over 2 decades of experience across multiple continents. Dean, welcome back. How are you doing today?
Very good, Watson. Lovely to be with you again.
Absolutely. So, Dean, leadership is it's a continuous process, right? So, what are the most what are the most important decisions you make as a leader within your organization and personal life?
Yeah, good question. Well, I think, like again, and I think I might have said this on previous podcasts when it comes to leadership, uh, the most important thing is, I think, for leadership is around creating a vision. Um, not only if you're leading, yourself personally, you need to have a vision in front of you. And I think a good leader always fosters um, that vision and is able to translate that vision down to his employees. Um, and then, of course, not necessarily micromanaging the vision, but maybe making decisions that are important to the people that are helping to bring that vision about. Um, so it's all about obviously being strategic, about planning, but obviously helping to execute that vision in the most cost efficient way, in the most efficient way. Um, and then obviously just encouraging and keeping people on track for that. Um, and I think creating for me as a leader is trying to create a sense of environment where you think that you feel that you're on an adventure, or you feel that you're on some type of journey. There's a purpose involved, and that kind of also adds for me, I think, a lot of the flavor to leadership is that you make those that are following you feel as if there is a great purpose that you're part of, or if something that's going to be worthwhile and meaningful in your lives.
Absolutely. So, based on your experience, how do you handle conflicts? Because people tend to have different opinions.
Yeah, well, first of all, important to just note is don't always try to avoid conflict. That never really solves anything. There's no point in trying to. There is always going to be conflict in any situation, whatever that is, any management situation, leadership situation, project that you're trying to execute. There's always going to be some sort of conflict. So the first thing is never avoid the conflict. What you want to do is try and create an environment where uh, everybody feels as if their points are heard, their points are valuable, that they have a channel or a outlet to put those things on the table. So you've got to keep the communication high. Um, Also, again, depending on the situation, you might have to isolate some of the conflict. So you don't want to affect the entire team. So maybe there'd be times where you have to isolate that conflict, or take it offline, as we like to say sometimes. Um, but I don't think there should ever be a goal to just try and eliminate conflict entirely, because conflict also has its own, it brings out its own, I think in some ways it brings out certain ideas. Um, there's a biblical saying, as iron sharpens iron, so man sharpens man. So sometimes that conflict can be healthy. And I think it's also important to differentiate between, what's healthy conflict for the team, and then what's going to be unhealthy for the team in general. And any time where that conflict's starting to really affect the team, again, isolate it, and then put a dampener on it, and get to a place of resolution as quickly as possible. Because, as I say, there's a place for good and bad conflict in the business. But if it's good conflict, it actually ends up helping people to grow, maybe helps people to see other people's points of view, helps people to put themselves in the other person's shoes and do those kinds of things, which are all important to resolving the conflict, whatever it is, wherever it comes from.
Valuable points. Yeah. So, what has rejection taught you?
Yeah, good question.
Mm.
Yeah, we all don't want to be rejected. We all want to be accepted, I think, more than anything else. But I think if I'm honest, well, first of all, rejection will definitely teach you to be resilient. If you don't let it beat you down, okay. Um, Maybe there's also a place where rejection kind of teaches you to be humble. You know,
Mm.
uh, sometimes you need maybe a check on your own self-importance. So so rejection helps you to feel a little bit humble. You know.
Mm.
Um, But again, as long as you bounce back and maybe don't take it all too personally, I mean, every single person in the world has been rejected at some point. I think
Mm.
every great entrepreneur, if he's worth his salt, will tell you that maybe his idea or his business or whatever was rejected at least more than 5 times at some point. Um, and so if you can just bounce back from that, take the lessons from it. Um, you and I were talking earlier about the don't waste your pain, Um, that rejection can always be turned into a positive if you just stay resilient, take the lesson that you need to take from it. And again, don't take yourself so seriously, don't take life so seriously. Don't become too wrapped up in your own self-importance. Um, and again, maybe out of that, I would say, don't spend your whole life trying to make sure that everybody accepts you, everybody likes you, because that's not necessarily a
Mm.
healthy pursuit.
Very true. Very true.
You're not going to
So,
be liked by everybody, Watson. Not everybody is just going to accept you. But if you spend your whole life trying to look for that as well, instead of actually coming to a point where you accept who you are and you know your limitations and you know what you're about, um, you don't have to waste too much energy on making sure that everybody accepts you and you just avoiding rejection completely. And I think at some point you could even get to a place where the rejection kind of just rolls off your back, and you don't get too phased out by it.
very true. So, now this is a bit of an interesting question, okay?
Yeah.
I would really like to know, how do you go about delivering bad news?
That's a good one. Uh, it reminds me of when I was in the police force in South Africa. There were obviously times uh,
Okay.
where we had to
Wow,
deliver.
20 police force. Wow, okay.
Yeah, I did 4 years in the police in South Africa way back. I'll give away my age if I tell you when. Let's just say it was prior to Mr. Nelson Mandela being released, and of course South Africa was at a very much of a political boiling point. But yeah, part of being a policeman in those days was delivering bad news, sometimes unfortunate to individuals or families. I think the two most important things that stick out, of course, is when you're delivering any bad news to anybody, you have to be empathetic. You put yourself in their shoes. You know what it's like to receive bad news. You know how you would like to receive that bad news and what you would kind of appreciate from someone delivering you that bad news. Um, and again, also, there is unfortunately, especially if it's, for example, a death or a murder or something like that, there is no way of sugarcoating that bad news. So in that in that respect, I'd just say the best policy there is absolute honesty. Um, so maybe let's say honesty and empathy are the absolute keys for me in terms of delivering bad news. Um, and the reason I say honesty, because yeah, you sometimes there really is no way of packaging the bad news that's going to make that news any easier for anybody, you know. And the minute that you give that news, they have questions and they need to be answered honestly, I think, in those kinds of situations.
Yeah. So, yeah, which it is.
And
Okay.
especially if you're thinking about really bad news. I mean, okay, if I come and I say you're being retrenched, I mean that to someone does seem like a pretty bad news. It's a lot comes with that. But there's again, you just have to be empathetic, I think, and very honest about that. And it's a little bit more different than when you're delivering the news of, say, someone passing away or being killed or something like that, because immediately there's a much bigger question for that individual as to why. Why is it happening to me? Why is he taken so soon? Why did this happen? Or why did someone do that to that person? It's a much deeper, bigger kind of question that comes from that type of news, you know.
True. So, who inspires you as a leader and why?
Who inspires me as a leader?
Yeah.
Wow, I've got a couple, but I think the easiest one for me is relating to my home country.
Okay.
I'd have to say Nelson Mandela.
Okay. Wow.
And the reason why, and I actually wrote an article on this in LinkedIn. Um,
Okay.
we incarcerated Nelson, and I say we because I was part of that government that incarcerated him at the time. We incarcerated Nelson Mandela for 29 years. And I always pondered, and I said this in the article, is when he first was put into jail, I don't think he ever thought that he was going to see the light of day.
Mm.
We convicted him of high treason because the African National Congress decided to take up arms as opposed to constructive negotiation with the government at the time. And it was that move that kind of allowed us to arrest him on high treason. But Nelson Mandela truly is inspiring because not only did he come out after 29 years not being bitter, he was the most reconciliatory figure in South Africa. He was the most unifying figure after 29 years of spending time in jail. He got 2 degrees while he was in jail, and he learned the language of, in that sense, you could say, of his enemy. Um, and I remember especially because South Africa is a very much a rugby nation, and we have a rugby team that's now won the World Cup 4 times. It's broken records, winning World Cup back to back. And the emblem of that team was the Springbok. And I'll never forget um, when he came out, they wanted to do away with this emblem. They wanted to discard it, and they had a big meeting about it. The powers that be at that time. And Nelson Mandela was one of the very few people that stood up and said, "No, I don't believe we must get rid of this symbol." And then I think a lot of people who have ever watched rugby will know famously he came out in 1995, the first time South Africa was allowed back in the World Cup. He came onto the field with a number 6 jersey. And I
Mm.
don't know who did or said to him, do that, or whose idea it was. But I tell you what, that man unified a nation in like 1 second. He literally unified a nation in 1 second. Um, and the political tension that was apartheid, which was in a sense between black and white, it was amazing to see what he did. And then, really, as a president, as a the first black president of South Africa, he led the country in an amazing way. And it is a pity he couldn't be president for longer. Um, but I mean, he deserved to spend more time with his family, and that after having spent so long in prison. Um, And I think if you ask most South Africans, they will tell you that Nelson Mandela is definitely someone that inspired them.
Mm. He inspires me actually, right? And I love his quote when he says that sports brings people together, right? So
Definitely, definitely.
because of MMA, how we became friends. Look at you and me, Dean. We
Yeah,
live
and
thousands
to
of
be
miles
honest,
apart.
the current minister, Gayton McKenzie, he even said, I heard him saying that his privilege of him being Minister of Sport is that he gets to carry on the legacy of Mr. Nelson Mandela, because sport is such a unifying. It is a unifying thing, and it's a great unifier in a sense around the world.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, how does working out, or in other words, exercising,
Yeah.
help you to be positive?
Yeah, I mean, sure, that's like close to my heart. I mean, been in the fitness business 29 years now. So physical fitness, not only for all the things that you're seeing now on Instagram and YouTube and whatever about different diets and, sleep and, just looking after yourself. Physical fitness for me represents at least some form of discipline, and focus. So I get up normally 5:30 every day to train. Um, I alternate between weights and swimming, but that's like a good way for, I think, someone to start the day. It just helps you, you know, get the blood circulating. It keeps you on a routine. It keeps you focused, gets you ready for the day. Some people prefer to train at the end of the day. That's fine. I mean, that keeps them focused in another way where they know they're coming to the end of the day. Um,
Hmm.
but I think for all the benefits that we all know in terms of just blood flow, heart flow, blood, brain coordination, everything. It's just a great way to stimulate like endorphins within the body, positive vibes, positive sort of mindset for the day. Uh, it's important, and I think it just helps your energy level, helps you with your eating, your digestion, and
Hmm.
because what we've learned over the years now, so much of your, let's say, of your mental positivity is linked to your gut, to your stomach, to the health of your gut biodome and all that. It's just important to maintain some form of physical activity in your life. Um, it contributes a lot to the positiveness of your thinking and your mind.
I agree because you need to work out well. Okay, I mean, sometimes we don't consume healthy foods, right? Sometimes we are seated most of the time, so we got to go up and about moving, right? So exercising is vital for body and for our health. Great.
Yeah.
And yeah. And Dean, any final message from you to our viewers and listeners?
Well, I think it's appropriate to just mention what we were talking about earlier is don't waste your pain. Um, Also to the point of rejection there, don't be afraid of failure or rejection. Um, Everybody has to experience failure and rejection. Out of the pain of that, your lessons are taken. And like I said to you as well, you don't want to have to repeat too much pain, because when you experience pain in life, it's sometimes God's way, the universe's way of saying you need to learn something. And very often there's a mindset with people. It's a simplistic mindset. We say pain is good, pain is bad, and you know everything else is good. And pain has this kind of negative connotation. When in actual fact, you don't realize sometimes that pain is a protector. Um, Failure is a protector. Rejection can be a protector. But we often just don't look at it like that. So if you look in life at all the lessons, the real lessons that you've learned, a lot of those lessons will come out of pain or failure or rejection, not out of all your happy times. It's normally out of the pain that your lessons come. And so I would say to the listeners, embrace your pain, learn from your pain, take what you can out of it, try not to have to repeat it if you haven't learned the lesson from it. And don't always look at pain as something that is negative, because it's actually not. Um, it's actually sometimes a way of protecting you too. If, for example, you did not feel the pain of touching a hot stove, where your pain sensors immediately kicked in, you would just leave your hand on the stove and it would burn until you've got like major third degree burns, right? Um,
Mm.
So I would say liken that to, say, for example, a bad relationship or a divorce where your heart is very sensitive after that, and you're kind of
Mm.
feeling very sensitive, and you're feeling like you're in a lot of pain. Um, Hopefully that pain doesn't make you make a silly decision by just jumping into another relationship, but it next time you may be a little bit wiser about your choice of partner. Um, you know, whatever, that pain can help protect you if you use it in the right way.
Absolutely. Wise words. So, Dean, thank you very much for taking time and doing this podcast with us.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure as always, Watson. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely.